Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. In today's video I'm going to make another envelope. I started with an A4 sized white cardstock and I'm scoring an 8 and 22 centimeters to create the side flaps. And for the top and the bottom flap I'm going to score at 2 on one side and at 4 on the other. And now I'm cutting the side pieces to create the actual envelope. When you cut these areas, make sure to go over the fold lines so the envelope can close well. Now I'm going to round the corners of the envelope. So to decorate this envelope, I challenged myself to only use one stamp set. This is a stamp set I got recently at a local store. I want to create a floral background and I chose that big floral stamp, which is absolutely gorgeous. And I'm going to stamp it with some black ink. I'm going to do that multiple times to create the background. And of course, while I do it, I angle the stamp differently so it actually looks like a patterned paper. I absolutely adore how this stamp looks. I think it's so detailed and it was very cheap as well, so I think it's always a good thing when you can find such good stamps for cheap. Okay, so to color the background, I'm going to be using different watercolor pencils. I've started with the roses with a light pink color. And I just filled up the whole flower in, and then of course I used water to activate the pencil. And I'm going to do the same thing for the bloom parts. I've used the same color. But because I thought my flowers were a little too light and I also wanted to add a little bit of shading to the coloring, I added a darker shade of pink, more dusty pink, and used it to create some shadows on my flowers. I colored in the darker areas of the stamp, and then I again used water, of course. Then I am going directly with my brush on a pencil and I'm filling those small flowers in a blue color. And now I'm coloring the berries. Well, I'm not sure if they are berries, I just interpreted them as that. and I've used two different shades of purple. I started with a lighter purple, and then I used a little bit of a darker purple to create the shadows. And then I started coloring the leaves on both the berry area and the leaves of the blue flowers. For the leaves of the blue flowers, I went in with a light green at first, and then I used a darker green. And finally, I added a little bit of black to create, again, a shaded look. And for the rose leaves, I started with a very, very light green. So I added a little bit of a darker green in the center area. And then again, I used black to darken the leaves a little bit because I did not like how light they were. So once I was done with the coloring, I started to glue down the envelope. I also inked up all the edges, but I apologize, I lost the footage of that. I just used Distress ink in Vintage Photo. Now I'm punching a hole on the top flap, and then I will be gluing down a little paper circle. And then I also added some hole reinforcements because I'm gonna create the closure with that. And to do that, I put some double-sided tape on the bottom flap. And with that, I'm gonna glue down this ribbon, as well as the bottom part of the envelope, of course. And I'm gonna tie a bow, and this is gonna be my closure. Okay, so now I'm going to start decorating my envelope. I started by gluing down this pink ribbon with some hot glue, and I'm wrapping it around the lower area of the envelope. So now I'm going to use another stamp from the same stamp set. It's kind of like a label that almost looks like a tag, and I'm going to stamp it with black ink on a piece of coffee dyed cardstock. And then I'm gonna cut it out. And because I want it to look like a tag, I also punched a hole through it. Then I added some ink, and I also stamped a sentiment on it and added a ribbon in the hole. I had to cut out the footage from it because it was out of focus and I did not notice that, but that's all I did. The sentiment Beautiful Life is also from the same stamp set. And I'm gonna glue down my little tag on some jute fabric. And then I'm gonna glue it down on the envelope. I also added a little piece of ephemera. And then I added 2 leaves. These leaves were from the stamp set. And I colored them with the same colors I used on the rose leaves of the background. Then I added this piece of ribbon. Because it was too small to create an actual bow with it, I used glue to sort of create a false bow. And then I added some pink thread and a butterfly shaped button in the center. Now I'm adding the sentiment. I decided to go with Bloom. The alphabet is from Tim Holtz and Sizig's Vault World Travel. And in video it's not very visible, but the letters I cut out of a pattern paper that was sort of a light blue color. I think it went well with the colors of the background. So our envelope is completed. This is how it looks up close. I wanted to keep the decoration simple because I wanted the background to sort of stand out, especially the coloring that it took me quite a long time to make. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider liking, subscribing to my channel, leave a comment down below, let me know what you think, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye!